Thank you all for joining us for Sing Sing Prison Museum's Pride webinar on gender identity, respect, dignity, and safety in New York prisons. I'm Nicole Hamilton, the collections manager for the Sing Sing Prison Museum, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. The Sing Sing Prison Museum is the extraordinary location where the complex and compelling stories of incarceration are shared on the grounds of one of America's most historic active prisons. A site of self-reflection and learning, the museum challenges all of us to imagine a more equitable criminal justice system and to take action towards building a more just society. We believe that by understanding the history of incarceration, we can be in a better position to change the system. And today's topic is an example of this. Gender identity and incarceration is not a new problem. In our research at the museum, we have uncovered stories of folks who were imprisoned for not following gender norms and expectations. Today, nearly 1 in 6 transgender Americans and 1 in 2 Black transgender people has been to prison. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Lithgow Osborne. Lithgow is the great-grandson of Thomas Mott Osborne, the eminent penal reformer and warden of Sing Sing from 1914 to 1916, and a member of the board of the Osborne Association for the past 25 years, as well as a board member of the Sing Sing Prison Museum. A graduate of Sarah Lawrence College and the New York School for Interior Design, his career has been in the antiques and design fields.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to be here. During this topic, and discussing this topic during Pride Month is very important to me as a member of the queer community. I am grateful for the opportunity to join in this conversation. When I started at the Osborne Association, I was still on the board. I was also on the board of the Correctional Association, and I toured any number of prisons in New York State. So I came into close contact with a lot of the men and women in New York State prisons, and the question of AIDS was very high, and was discussed greatly because there was a number of cases of AIDS in the prison, and so of course the conversation around sexuality and danger and medical needs. And so this conversation is not new. We've been having it for a while. This is a particular aspect of it that I think is extremely important. And we're here today to talk a little bit more about it. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Cutie Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham is a fierce transgender woman who continues to fight for criminal justice reform. While incarcerated, Ms. Cutie first started the first official LGBTQ organization at Fishkill Correctional Facility in New York. As a result, Ms. Cutie held the first historic gay pride event at Fishkill in June 2019, where members of the LGBTQ community, family, and friends gathered and attended to support and celebrate Gay Pride Month. In the month of May 2019, Ms. Cutie completed her associate's degree in liberal arts from Nyack College at Fishkill Correctional Facility. Ms. Cutie has been a member of the Justice Advisory Committee at the New York Women's Foundation Fund since 2019, where she continues to fight hard for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals who face a number of adversities both in and out of prison. Our next panelist is Kai Elbidi. Kai Elbidi is from Buffalo, New York. He worked his way up from making 15 cents an hour to receiving the highest pay of 75 cents an hour, with a $100 bonus doing abatement inside New York State maximum security prison. After realizing who he was during serving time in prison, Kai earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Marymount of Manhattan in sociology. Kai specializes in the removal of hazardous waste and is on his way to becoming licensed in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Kai is the creator of Work for Kai, Your Guy. Your Guy? Got it right? No, you'll correct me when we get on. The next person up, and thrilled to have her, is New York State Senator Julio Salazar. Upon her election in 2018, she became the youngest woman elected in the history of New York State. Senator Salazar currently serves as the chair of the state's Senate Committee on Crime, Victims, Crime, and Correction. And she previously served as chair of the Committee on Women's Issues. Senator Salazar is sponsoring the Human Alternatives to Long-Term Solitary Confinement Act, which became law in the spring of 2021. She is currently the sponsor of S6677A, which would mandate gender identity, respect, dignity, and safety in New York State jails and prisons. Our final panelist is Alibaum from the New York City Civil Liberties Union. She helps and advocates for policy solutions primarily related to gender and sexuality, in particular LGBTQ equality and privacy and technology. Baum was a legal fellow for Senator Dick Durbin on the Senate Judiciary Committee and worked in President Barack Obama's office in the White House Council and Equal Employment Opportunity Commissioner's Charlotte Burroughs office. Employment Opportunity Commissioner Charlotte Burroughs office at the National Women's Law Center and at the National Partnership for Women and Families. She was also a public interest fellow and served as a legal observer at the military commissions in Guantanamo Bay. Before we get into our questions, we are going to play a short I think it's 2.5-minute film video, which will help to, bring to the fore the conversation that we're going to be having tonight.
My name is Michaela Marie Holland. I'm 23. I work at a nursing home here in Binghamton, New York. The Broome County Jail definitely did scar me. When they found out that I was trans, I instantly was a target. I felt like the jail was not equipped for a trans woman, and definitely a trans woman of color. It was a lot of things I was refused and neglected because my birth certificate said one thing on it, and I'm physically what you see. They would try to show me their privates every day. Men would ask me to see my chest every day. In jail, there's no one to be trusted, not even the corrections officers, the people that you think you could trust. When the jail denied me my hormone therapy and my depression medication, I felt like my life was just being snatched from me. I felt like there was no need to live. The nights that I cried and the pain that I felt and the heat flashes that I felt and nobody cared, I shouldn't have to live my lifestyle with a worry. Should no one have to live their lifestyle with a worry? I'm so dedicated to my transition and me because it's my truth. It's truly how I feel. I feel like this is just me. I want all New Yorkers to know, if you want the utmost respect, give the utmost respect. Just let everyone be great, because everyone is different in their own skin.
Wow, that was fantastic. Allie, we're gonna, the first question is for you. Can you tell us, can you explain your role as policy counselor for NYCLU? We know that in March this year, you testified before the New York State Senate Select Committee dealing with the dangers faced by trans people in New York State jails and prisons. Can you discuss some of these dangers?
Sure, thanks. And I'm happy to answer that question, but I actually think that there are perhaps more important people here to start with today. So I want to create space and see if Ms. Cutie or Kai would like to hop in and speak before I do. I feel like as an advocate, part of my role is centering the people I work for and with.
Okay. Cutie, we know that there's evidence that trans people experience a number of risk factors such as homelessness, poverty, family rejection that lead to early contact with the juvenile justice system. Did any of these factors play a role in your ultimate incarceration?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in the streets of Brooklyn, so I grew up in the projects. And ever since as a young age, I always knew I was different. So I had to fight. So not only just fight, you had to survive just racial profiling. You had discrimination against, not just against me, but just other LGBT members that I was growing up as our own. So, you know, and top of that, when you don't have no support system in a community, it's hard for a member of the LGBT community to see something forward or look for something in the near future of hope. And we don't have that. And it's being in prison, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, to the point where as Sam stated earlier, is that I started the first LGBT organization at Fiscal Correctional Facility. And the amount of pressure and the abuse that I had to go through in order to start that for the community was absolutely ridiculous. We're in a point where you just couldn't even make it up, where I was abused and just thrown in special housing units because of the fact that I voiced my opinion against the inequality of way of life in prison. It's one thing that, okay, we sent us to do our crime and do whatever bit that we had to do, but the judge never said that we had to do another bit on top of another bit, dealing with the nonsense that we have to deal with in prison. And when I say that I had to go to the courts, I had to write grievances, I had to file lawsuits, the whole shebang, just to form an organization. And then the thing is that Senator, I appreciate the fact that you actually doing something and actually presenting this with New York State, the governor, and everything else to try to pass this bill and everybody else on this line here. And the thing is that things need to be more done as a sense of maybe have a watchdog committee where you have individuals like myself and Kai to go in the facility and talk to the individuals what's going on. Because otherwise than that, it's just you don't have people to go in. People can't experience or to know exactly what's going on unless they've been there. So if you bring individuals, it's just a suggestion, have individuals like myself to go in these prisons and be a ambassador. Just to actually have fun, so the LGBT community can have a support, an avenue to talk to, because in there, the avenues are trying to communicate to the outside world about what's going on is absolutely ridiculous. But like I said, it's just the fact that.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. Kai, do you want to talk to us a little bit about your journey?
Well, my journey, can you repeat the question? Because you did ask like.
I asked a bunch of questions, but what I want to know is you were incarcerated, and I understand that you realized that you were trans when you were in prison. Is that right?
No, I felt like I didn't realize I was trans. I knew all my life, but it was just a point of expressing it. And there, it was suppressed for so long because it was never seen. When I was growing up, it was like forbidden in my household because I was raised with a Southern Black grandmother. You know, it wasn't believed. And it was something you said in your question earlier also, you know, about the support of the community and things like that. And I feel like I didn't repress who I was in the street. I became more hyper-masculine, if you will, because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want people to associate me being female. So with the socially constructed, what a man's supposed to be, the aggressiveness, that all led to a life of crime. Because I was over hyper-masculine with trying to fit and trying to make people respect me for who I was. Then when I became incarcerated, it was just like, before I left, I was young. I did 20 years in prison. I was young. So I think the only person I knew who was trans was like Chaz Bono, but it was like nothing to really be talked about. So it wasn't nothing to express. When it became apparent for me, I was very, very, like I said, I was young when I went to prison. I was upset at my prison sentence. So I was very, you know, angry in prison. So I did a lot of time in a box. I never had no problem with doing time in a box, getting the things that I need, far as, can I get a pair of male pajamas, the pull-ups? I don't wear gowns. One day in 2009, I went to the box before I became reformed, and they refused to give me pants as pajamas, so they only have gowns. That's when my advocacy and my fight and all that became, like Cutie said, it became, you have to put everything on paper. You have to go, nothing was changed overnight. I did my whole shoe bid with just wearing a towel wrapped around me and things like that, but the law did get changed, but nothing in prison is immediate. It's always, you got to go through the course. You got to put a grievance in. The grievance takes like 90 days. So backing up what Cutie say, I agree. You need somebody that has already been in the inside, that's on the outside, that knows these things. Because if you don't have nobody to fight, I had a lawyer named Mick Kincaid. He was from Prisoner Legal Service. He came to see me. He was also a fierce advocate in anything I needed to do. My mouthpiece sometimes wouldn't get it. His mouthpiece, because he is a lawyer, got things done. And a lot of people don't have them resources. Like I said, before I became rehabilitated and reformed, I did a lot of shoe time. So I read a lot. I found places. A lot of people are not literate. A lot of people don't know how to write a grievance, so they don't get heard. Luckily, fortunately for me, I was one of the fortunate ones. And also, I seen a lot of my trans brothers get treated than I did. They might be a little younger. They might not have as much time as me. So they might can't get things that has been done by the system for hundreds of years. They can't get it. Like, I can go talk to an officer and, yeah, you got 20 years under your belt, so we can see you, Kai Didi. We can listen to you, versus, hey, this is my trans brother. You keep calling him she. You know, he doesn't like that, but you call me he, but he's in the same dorm as me. Give him the same respect. You know what I mean? But instead of voicing it being boisterous, it's a way, using this pen. That's the only thing we have in advocacy in prison.
Thank you. Allie, do you want to hop in here?
Sure. So I'm happy to speak, and I do want to I just also sort of defer to the senator and acknowledge, you know, her really phenomenal work and expertise here and leadership. Also, Kai mentioned Mick Kincaid, and I was supposed to greet both Kai and Miss Kitty on Mick Kincaid's behalf. He's really thrilled that you're doing this and just sung your praises to the heavens. I think you asked me what I do. So my role as a policy counsel at the New York Civil Liberties Union is to work with policymakers to make good laws and to defeat bad laws. I'm sort of a bridge between what's happening with human beings out in the world and what's happening in the Albany Capitol. I'm someone who gets to think really carefully about the legalese and the language, and how do we make this work? How do we make it change lives for folks currently in the inside? How do we get the voices of folks who are currently in the inside up into the halls of Albany? Those are all things that I do along with my really phenomenal coalition partners, including Nick. I think you also asked me, did you ask me to do sort of a like bird's eye view of what's the world? I'd sort of lost track.
Sure.
So, you know, and I think Kai and Cutie spoke to it really well in their experience, and as did our client, Michaela, in her video. And their experiences, unfortunately, are not unique at all. So I think we started out this panel with the statistics that 47% of Black transgender people and more than 1 out of 5 transgender women of all ethnicities are incarcerated during their lifetimes. That is not because folks are disproportionately criminal or deviant. That is because transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and intersex people often survive at the intersections of many, many socioeconomic burdens. They face food insecurity, shelter insecurity, employment insecurity, race-based, gender-based, gender identity-based, discrimination issues, immigration status issues. They're notoriously policed, they're notoriously criminalized. And so all of that, more folks end up on the inside. And once they're there, the situation is very much for many people, as Kai and Ms. Cutie described. So Sylvia Rivera Law Project and Take Root Justice recently did a survey of transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and intersex people who are incarcerated in the New York State prison system. And they found that all TGNC respondents who identify as women were housed in male facilities. They also found that 2/3 of those respondents had requested transfers to female facilities due to safety issues. Most of them were denied, often with inhumane language. 75% of respondents experienced sexual violence by corrections officers. Again, 75% by corrections officers. 95% reported being verbally harassed and called derogatory names by corrections staff. And as a result, 51% tried to harm themselves while they were incarcerated. 34% tried to kill themselves. So when we talk about the Gender Identity, Respect, Dignity, and Safety Act that I know we're going to get into in a minute, we are talking about life-saving work here. We are talking about figuring out how to keep people safer, both physically safer and also just like safer as human beings while they are on the inside. And, you know, I think, sorry, I should not read the chat while I'm talking. I think the other thing I wanted to say is that in addition to sort of those statistics, we see folks who are misgendered, as Kai described. We see folks who are denied clothing items, commissary items that match their gender identities. And then when we see people who are either attacked by prison officials or attacked by other incarcerated folks who defend themselves, or when the prison figures out that you can't safely house a person out of gender alignment, they often put them in involuntary protective custody for very long periods of time. And involuntary protective custody is a nice euphemism that sounds a lot like solitary confinement. So I'll stop there. That's the bird's eye view of the world as it exists now, that we're hoping to change, working to change.
Before we go to Senator Salazar and talking about the bill, I just want to say the name of Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, because these ladies were extremely important and advocates and our ancestors, or as my friend Justin Vivian Bod says, our transcestors. So say their names. Marsha P. Johnson, I had the privilege of meeting her a number of times. She was awesome. She was 100% love. Despite her, you know, her circumstances, she was love. So I will we will now turn to Senator Salazar, who is working very hard to get this bill. Is it passed, or is you're working to get it passed?
We are working to get the Gender Identity, Respect, Dignity and Safety Act, the GERDS, as we call it for short, legislation passed still. Yeah.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about the bill?
Absolutely. And first, I just want to say thank you Miss Cutie and to Kai. It really is so important to organize, for Miss Cutie within Fishkill, within correctional facilities. It's hard enough to advocate for yourself under these circumstances, but to take the experience that you're going through and to advocate to change the conditions for other trans and gender nonconforming people who are incarcerated is really remarkable. And so I just wanted to thank you for that, and also to the NYCLU and to you, Ali, for your work and for that really powerful video and sharing Michaela's story with us. As it was mentioned by Lithgow, I currently serve as the chair of the State Senate's Committee on Crime Victims, Crime and Correction, which has presented an opportunity for me to visit prisons and the correctional facilities all over the state of New York, and also to introduce this legislation, the Gender Identity, Respect, Dignity, and Safety Act. And the purpose of this legislation is really to address the serious problem that Ali described, where the vast majority of, as far as we can tell, and I can speak more about that, the vast majority of individuals who are trans or gender nonconforming, non-binary, or intersex in our jails and prisons in New York are not housed with dignity in housing that is appropriate for their self-identified gender identity. Most people are, whether they prefer it or not, forced to be assigned to housing solely based on their sex assigned at birth. We know that people who are trans or gender nonconforming are far more likely to be victims or survivors of violence while incarcerated than cisgender incarcerated individuals are. And that risk is only exacerbated for individuals who are put in the potentially unsafe situation of being housed in those circumstances, right? Not in circumstances where they're housed with people who are not of the same gender as them, or who they're not comfortable being housed with. And so what the GERDS Act would do is make sure that when someone is first going through, they are housing based or self-identified. The current presumption, although docs probably wouldn't refer to it that way, is that they, just be housed based on their sex assigned at birth. It honestly is pretty simple, straightforward legislation in a sense. However, there is, of course, resistance to it, and some of that resistance is just rooted in transphobia, right, and discrimination that society certainly exists within docs. And I think some of the resistance is due to a lack of fundamental understanding of gender identity and concern for an understanding of the violence that TGNC individuals face while incarcerated, and also even a lack of information. So when we a few months. The hearing was actually more broadly on sexual violence and gender-based violence in New York's correctional facilities, but that certainly naturally there was a focus within the hearing on the impact of sexual violence and gender-based violence on TGNC incarcerated individuals. And in discussing that, hearing testimony from and people who are experts in this, we really discovered that we do have to rely on, thankfully, the work of Sylvia Rivera Law Project, because on how many individuals reported actually being housed based on their gender identity and their preference. Because Docs does not, while Docs pats themselves on the back and says, oh, we have a committee that considers requests for someone to be transferred to housing based on their gender identity, Docs really does not in any organized or official way maintain data on how their policies are impacting people who are trans or gender nonconforming in their facilities. So in that respect, it just doesn't seem that they're taking it seriously. And oh yes, I just saw just a question in the chat from Sam. Yes, this legislation would not only apply to state facilities and docks, but also to local correctional facilities, to jails as well. Yeah.
What is the likelihood of the bill passing?
I actually think it's very likely. And one very specific reason why, apart from that, I'm very determined to see it pass, and we have a strong coalition of advocates supporting the legislation. Earlier this year in the state budget process, the executive, in the executive budget, the governor was seeking to pass not the same proposal, but was seeking to include in the budget and see legislation passed that can have the right to request housing based on their gender identity. It would have been an improvement on the existing policy in docs when it comes to housing based on gender, but the proposal the governor was not at, it would not have codified the rights for TGNC individuals, essentially, that the GERDS Act would. So it was important for us to continue fighting to make sure that we actually pass this legislation that has been directly informed by the experiences of TGNC people who have been incarcerated. But I think that because of that, demonstration of good intentions by the governor and other legislators, it made me feel really hopeful that we could get this done next session.
The next question, I know that there's a whole process to get a bill onto the floor and getting it, voted on and everything. But I suspect with the Department of Corrections, the same would be with the Department of Corrections, that there's a lot of education that needs to go on. A lot of letting our peers know that this is an issue, that this is a problem, and we do need to address it, because, incarcerating people is the punishment. It's not, it's not the beginning of the punishment, that's the punishment. So, denying, individuals their basic human rights and denying them their own dignity, their, freedom of expression, is just compounds the punishment. So thank you, Senator. I appreciate your efforts, and certainly let us know what we need to do to help you to get that passed. I'd like to say that I would buttonhole my senator, but I don't think she'd hear me. She's no friend of mine. So anyway, I want to move on and talk about the life after incarceration. Kai, do you want to talk about your work?
Sure. Well, I came home in 2019 after doing 20 years. It was a little rough, but I got into a great job doing abatement because, as my profile said, I started abatement up there. So it was like a program I did. It paid like $30 a day. You drove on a van and you did city work, but the whole catch was if you continue with it and you show that you don't complain, you show up on time, they pay for whatever training you wanted to do. So I got the training, became a supervisor, then COVID hit. And then I went back to work, started, going out of town. But then I found out I don't like to work. Sorry, it's the truth. I was 20 years, I had to work for things for like 15 cents. I'm 44 now. I came home when I was 42. I feel like I'm old. I'm tired of breaking down houses, doing abatement. So I decided I want to open my own business, start my own LLC and do something. And my parole officer used to say, you get all this training and Kai, you haven't settled down and doing what? Now I'm about to take HVAC. I do home repairs now. And it's just like, I don't want to settle down and do nothing. I just like doing everything because I guess I miss so much. So maybe I could have been a firefighter. Who knows? So I try to do all these different jobs. I get a lot of leads, it pays well, but it's just my own thing. I work at my pace. I'm at a site now, the walls and stuff. That's why I'm facing this way because I got you at one of my sites and I just love working with my hands. I was telling a friend of mine before I started this, I was like, I really don't know what I want to say because it's like in prison, I was such a fierce advocator, but like out here, it's like I shrunk, like not shrunk, but it's like, I don't know. I guess I don't want to bring the attention because it was so hard in there to be respected for who I was. Now I don't have to answer to nobody. It's like if I'm not angry or I'm not excited, y'all probably wouldn't even know that I was born a female at birth. But sometimes my voice do give me away when I'm excited or when I'm happy. But other than that, it's like I do no advocacy work. Like even when I first came home, I had a problem getting my testosterone. I had a lot of shifts in New York City that does a little piece of light, them type of organization, the Osborns. I have a couple of associates that work there, and I had reached out to them, and they was like, Kai, you know what to do. Like these doctors is not listening to you. Nobody, the insurance don't want to pay for your testosterone because I didn't have money when I first came out to pay for my own. Instead of me doing what I do know how to do is using my voice, using my intelligence, using my education, I settled out. I called a friend, another trans brother from the Bronx, and he mailed me testosterone. But I shouldn't have had to do that. But like I said, I think because I'm out here and free after 20 years, I shrunk away from the fight. And maybe because it's just not a lot, or maybe I don't know it's a lot of things or a lot of problems that's in Buffalo, New York versus when I go to New York City, I know things, I know the problems, I see it. And I think, I don't know why that I don't like have the drive in me no more. I just want to be a normal guy out here after doing 20 years.
Yeah, you're free. You're free to do what you want.
Yeah.
Cutie, you want to talk a little bit about what you've been up to since I know that, I mentioned it when I introduced you, but you could tell us a little bit about your advocacy work.
Yes. My laptop and my phone is acting up today. When I first came home, I came home in 2019, and I was fortunate to get into an SRO. I stayed there for about 2 years, and at the same token, I received my bachelor's in organizational management from Nyack College. While doing that, I was a member of I got on with the New York Women's Foundation as a JAG member. I'm also a member of the Family Center on their community team as well. Since I've been home, I'm working with a company called Block Power. and they are a clean energy company. And what they do is helping buildings upgrading heating systems. And currently, I'm helping my teammates and other co-workers. We are doing a curriculum for Black Power workforces, which they are getting ready to train 1,000 George Floyd individuals. So Black Powers are giving back to the city and looking out for the younger generation and giving them the opportunity to advance in green construction. So currently, that's what I'm doing right now as we speak.
Nice. So Ali, I know that that there's a lot on your plate. You're very, but we've heard both of our panelists talk about what could individuals do to support your work, and the people who are attending this webinar, what could they do to support the senator, but also your work as well?
Sure. Well, on this particular bill, I dropped a link into the chat, and perhaps I'll drop it in again to NYCLU's Action Center. And if you go to this link, you can send a message to your state elected officials, your assembly person, your senator, and the governor, urging them to get the Gender Identity, Respect, Dignity, and Safety Act done. The legislature is currently out of session, so in some ways, your elected officials are home. They're probably out campaigning, many of them, but that means that you may actually interact with them in real life in the wild. And so that's a great opportunity if you do see someone to say, hey, this bill is really important, and you should co-sponsor it. And you should, encourage leadership to bring it up for a vote when the legislature reconvenes in January.
So when you say you to connect with your local electeds, you mean when they go out on the campaign trail and they happen to be, giving a stump speech somewhere, that anybody anywhere can ask them a question and put them on the spot and ask them, are you an ally? Or would you co-sponsor this bill?
Exactly. And it may not even need to be as formal as, showing up to a debate or showing up to a forum. I've at least experienced elected officials, being out by the farmers market because they want to talk to voters. Right. And that's that's a wonderful thing about doing state and local work, is that we have a lot more access to our elected officials here in New York than we do to, say, our Congress people. And folks should take advantage of that. If you see your elected official at the farmers market or standing outside the subway, handing out materials and saying, vote for me, you can ask them where they are on this bill and encourage them to support it.
Yes. Well, it is, I live upstate. I don't live in the city. So most of our electeds have offices. And going to their office and dropping in and finding out, well, when is the senator going to be here? When is the assemblyman going to be here, or assemblywoman or senator? When are they going to be here? And then, really putting them on the spot and, really getting into it. Most electeds are perfectly comfortable doing that. Do we have any other questions? I see one question here for Senator Salazar. There's a growing backlash against criminal justice reform in New York. Are you worried this bill will be impacted by this?
Yeah, this is important for us to think about all the time, right? Basically, the opposition and anticipate how do we address the opposition. I think it's important for us to consider not only the backlash against criminal justice reform in New York, but also it is something that's happening across the country. And on this issue specifically, it's in some ways directly related to the hatred against trans and gender nonconforming individuals that we're seeing right now. It makes it, I would say, when it comes to this bill and this advocacy, I'm not worried about the opposition, but rather that opposition only motivates me more to fight for this, especially in a state like New York. I think part of what makes me hopeful about and motivates me on to work on state policy specifically is that even when conditions are really, I'll say, daunting and can be very, very challenging at the federal level, we have the ability here in New York, in a generally more progressive state, to fight for state law protections for our people, and in this case for TGNC New Yorkers. So I'm less worried about it than I am very conscious of it at all times, and anticipating how do we push back against this, and part of it is reminding people. I think that that Lithgow, you spoke to it well. Often we really are tasked with making the public, helping the public understand that beyond a sentence or punishment that is handed down by the court, people are experiencing essentially extrajudicial punishment in our jails and prisons, in the way that they are treated, and in the way that our society tolerates that, precisely because they are incarcerated, and because there is this sickness, this belief in our society that because someone is incarcerated, they don't they suddenly give up the rights that we all should have, and that isn't true. Of course, we all know that isn't true, but I think sometimes we just need to name that and say it explicitly for people to understand, and to for people who aren't part of this movement yet to join us in fighting for this, in fighting for the GERDS Act, but also just for individuals in jails and prisons to be treated as the rest of us are, like human beings.
Cutie, do you want to weigh in on any of this?
Well, the Senate said everything, and I agree with her. Whatever I could do on my part to help out, I am more than willing, because at the end of the day, this is a fight, and we're not going nowhere. And people, it's about a respect thing, and seems like a lot of people don't understand about giving respect to the next man. So at the end of the day, I'm here to do whatever is necessary to get the word out and hopefully get this bill passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Kai?
The same, this is a big step for me to be even on a piano. Like I told you, I usually stay in the background. So, I mean, I'm on board. I would like to continue, any way I can on my end, like I do travel to New York City a lot. So, I mean, I'm not left in the dark. Like I said, it might not be a lot of issues here or things, but I know it's other outlets and other things that I can do. But like I said, this is my first step. I usually wouldn't even be on a piano like this, but as I was talking to one of my Hudson Link sisters, and I was telling her, like, of course I would do this, because I haven't did nothing. So I didn't mind coming here. I don't mind being a voice. Masters, I don't use it. I use my hands. Like, I don't mind. But I mean, I just seen a link that somebody sent me and said what I can do. And thank you, Ali. I know it came from you. But like I said, I'm here.
Let me ask you, and this is a question for both you and Cutie, but I'll go to you first because I have your attention. Are you still experiencing a certain amount of discrimination because of who you are now?
For me, no. That's what I said. The fight, I know it's never going to be over, but like I said, I feel comfortable in my skin out here because, like I said, like if I didn't tell you who I was, you would never know. You know what I mean? Like I can say the only problem I had, I have a gym membership at LA Fitness. I don't know if y'all have a LA Fitness, and before I got everything to coincide my ID and everything, it said my birth name. So he was like the dude who, you know, you get a mentor and he take you around, and like he was so advocate like of me using the female shower in the bathroom or whatever to walk in so he could show me the pool. And I was trying to explain it to him, and I just think he didn't get it. And I don't think it was done on a disrespectful level. I just think it was done pure ignorance, just not knowing. You know what I mean? So that was like the biggest thing I ever had. And, you know, like I don't get no help, but I don't dwell on it. Like when I couldn't get insurance to help pay for my top surgery, I didn't complain. I didn't write nobody. I didn't say nothing. I just worked harder, did more overtime. I barely stayed home. I was working in Corning, New York. I didn't even come home on the weekend, but it was because it was for a goal. And I felt like if they wasn't going to pay it, no, I'm not going to beg. But they was like, you know, it's another way. But I felt like I came from that. I just worked for it. Back then, I couldn't work for it. I had to fight for it. Here, I just felt like I worked for it. So that's my take on. I really don't have any discrimination because, like I said, I play the background a lot.
Okay. Cutie?
Well, it's prevalent on a daily basis, but it's getting better. I'm dealing with it. The thing is that I realize is that when a person first meets me, it's like an initial shock. Or they're curious. It's like once they get over that whole initial shock of who I am, then I get like, okay, here I am. You got over the looks. How may I help you today? So, you know, but normally it works that way. It goes well. But once they get over that initial shock with me, I have no problem with no one.
That's great. Wow. Okay. So, do we have any questions from our the audience, from our visitors for the panel?
It looks like there may be a few more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to read them out.
No, I see. We discussed opposition to the bill. We discussed continued discrimination. There we go. What is the wrap-up time for the webinar? I'm not 100% certain. Oh, okay. The Sing Sing Prison Museum host is telling me that we can wrap it up. Thank you all, the participants. Thank you all for taking the time and coming to speak with us today about this, you know, this very, very important conversation. In my lifetime, since I started on the Osborne Association board 25 plus years ago, in the time of AIDS, can you turn off your mic? That's not. That the issue of gender nonconforming trans people, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people, are only highlighted, have been highlighted more and more. So when we bring them up, when we bring the question up, when we address it, then we can begin to fix it. Then we can begin to make some changes, and nothing happens overnight, especially in prison. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And on behalf of the Sing Sing Prison Museum Board and our panelists, I thank you all for joining us, and please keep in touch. Thank you.